Within head coach JJ Redick's new and improved Lakers offense, Austin Reaves has been more involved than ever, to the point where there are stretches of games that he actually looks like their go-to creator. Now that D'Angelo Russell is seemingly coming off the bench, his responsibility has only increased, and not only has he responded, he's exceeded all expectations, solidifying himself as a legitimate number 3. One big change in LA's approach this year has been running a more organized offense, and one of the reasons they're able to utilize so many different sets, actions, or just ways of setting up the floor comes back to the versatility of a player like Austin Reaves. Take this sideline out of bounds play for example. Reaves is going to come off a cross screen to get the ball, only to immediately hand it back off to LeBron. From there, Bron can set up the two-man game with AD and do what he does best as a creator. But what if I told you that just a few minutes before that they ran the exact same play, and Reaves recognized that Bron's man was going to chase him to the ball, so instead of handing it off, he kept it on a drive for an easy path to the rim. Here's another time they ran it against the Pistons, and now instead of coming off the screen to get the ball, he's the one inbounding. Ivy jumps out on an early switch to prevent Reaves from getting the handoff, and D'Lo's left with space to attack on a drive. Those cross screens aren't just a part of those out of bounds sets, they're a big part of their overall half-court offense, and Reaves, being a very skilled passer, is often the one initiating and hitting these shooters in stride. Sometimes though, he's the one screening, and not only is he good at putting his body in position to make contact, if the defense messes up their coverage, he's a threat to pop for a 3. More times than not though, he's the guy curling off of these screens as an attacker. If he catches the ball with space to drive, he'll turn the corner and do exactly that. If he catches the ball with space to drive, turns the corner, and help sinks to protect the nail, he'll kick it back out to that shooter on the wing, and if his defender overplays the side of the screen, not letting him curl into open space at all, he'll counter with a sharp backdoor cut for some more offense at the rim. Something else LA's done a lot of this year is set up action in an open corner, and typically that means running some sort of two-man game. They'll often set up handoffs going towards the baseline, and it's in these spots where Reaves is able to make all sorts of different reads. Like I said, that starts away from the ball, because if his defender overplays the handoff, he will counter with his movement, this time finding an opening for a 3. If Reaves is the one starting in the corner and receives a handoff going towards the middle, he's great at reading the nail defender. This time Tyus doesn't commit, so he takes a couple extra dribbles to draw him a bit closer before making the kickout pass to D'Lo for a practice triple. This next play really showcases his versatility. It starts with one of those handoffs going towards the baseline, and Reaves doesn't really find much of an opening, so he immediately gets the ball back to AD to run that action towards the middle, only to counter with one of those sharp cuts, and the result is an easy 2. The key here is how quick he is to process the defense and adjust. This time the ball is in his hands, and they're trying to push him towards the middle, but by attacking that open space baseline, he's able to create a lane, then with a step through, he forces contact. And for all of the action they run, those simple pick and rolls with the ball in his hands are where he's at his best as a player. For starters, he's got all sorts of ways to attack drop coverage, starting with his off-the-dribble jump shooting. He didn't really start shooting pull-up threes at volume until last season, and he still isn't getting them off at a crazy rate, but 2 a game at 37% is more than enough to keep the defense honest. And so far this year, he's taken that up another notch, now up to nearly 3 a game. Using the last 3 seasons to get a bigger sample to work with, he's attempted about 240 pull-up threes and made a pretty impressive 37.8% of them. If he can maintain a 37 to 38% average while taking 2 or 3, that's a very effective form of offense out of pick and roll. Typically when attacking a deep drop coverage though, he's looking to play in between, where he's got a really diverse mid-range game. He's got soft touch on floaters, he's got a smooth pull-up jumper from anywhere inside the arc, and when needed, he can create a little extra separation by changing speeds or directions. If we use last season and the start of this season, 92 games of data, his mid-range numbers are really impressive. He's made 49.2% of his short mid-range shots, so your floaters, pull-up jumpers near the paint, which is right around the range of names like Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Brandon Ingram. And so what a lot of defenses will do to not let him step into pull-up jumpers, either from 2 or 3, is bring their drop coverage a lot closer to the level of the screen, to which he'll either respond by attacking that added space on a drive to the rim, or by pausing and trapping the point of attack defender on his hip or backside before slowly working his way to his spots. As a result, he's able to pressure the defense in enough ways as a scorer that a third defender often has to get involved. This time it's Booker dropping from the weak side to tag the roll, and Reaves is capable of making that skip pass to an open shooter in the corner. Later in that game, we saw virtually the exact same play, with Reaves coming off a pick and roll to his right, and the low man starting to drop to tag the roll. But now Reaves is going to stare down the corner to threaten the skip pass, sending O'Neal on a closeout, only to dump it into Davis. Like I keep saying, it's all about processing the defense and making the right counters. This time it's a pick and roll going towards the middle, and he draws some aggressive help at the nail. A lot of ball handlers would pick the ball up right here and kick it to the shooter, but what Reaves does is he hesitates and looks away to clear the middle before continuing his drive and getting to a really tough finish. Speaking of finishing around the basket, that's another area where Reaves excels. Over the last 2 seasons, he's made 75.5% of his shots at the rim, which is second among all guards behind just Luka Doncic, and even ahead of some play finishers like DeAndre Ayton and Rudy Gobert. But because he isn't a plus athlete in really any major category, whether you're talking about burst, verticality, strength, or even length, it all comes back to skill. His touch is just phenomenal, and he's great at using different angles to scoop the ball over or around shot blockers. He also has remarkable body control both on the floor and in midair, which really helps him finish at those more awkward angles or with added contact. He pairs that ability to score through contact with great knowledge of how and when to initiate or force it, which has made him pretty great at drawing fouls. Obviously, he won't have the free throw rates of generational athletes, but for what he does as an attacker and where he operates on the floor, getting to the line over 4 times every 75 possessions is a pretty impressive mark over the last 3 seasons. However, I mentioned his lack of burst. Although he's great at finishing around the rim, he's not the type of creator that can just create an automatic downhill advantage and get there at volume. That's why you'll rarely ever see him playing one-on-one, and almost all of his on-ball offense starts with the help of a screen. But one thing that I think gets underrated with a lot of creators who play off of screens is the ability to manipulate them. Reaves is great at using his handle to run his defender into the screen, creating space to attack and ultimately pressure the big. That means he's also great at rejecting the screen like he does with this beautiful behind the back, and that turns the play into a 2-on-1 going at the rim. I actually want to focus on his passing for a second though, because while I do think he's great in that regard, there are still some limitations. For one, I think he has a tendency to telegraph his more advanced passes, such as those skips to the weak side corner, and I also don't think he's the greatest at hitting tight windows near the paint, whether that means failing to thread the needle or just forcing the ball into a non-existent opening. When you pair those limitations with the lack of physical prowess, I'm not sure he could take on the load of a number 1 or number 2 creator on an elite team offense. I think he's best suited as that second guy on the perimeter, third guy in the pecking order overall, which is why it's huge for his game that he's able to play off of a creator like LeBron. I mentioned that Reaves will sometimes screen and set action. Occasionally, they'll also have him screen for the ball. LeBron draws 2, leaving Reaves in the short roll, and nobody picks up, so he's got one of those automatic jumpers. Here's another example. Reaves screens, Bron draws 2 and hits him in the short roll, only this time the space gets closed, so he makes a quick extra pass to the corner. From there, the defense is in rotation and Rui gets to a dunk. What makes these screens so tough to defend isn't just the fact that Reaves can play out of the short roll. It's also that if the defense decides to switch, now LeBron is attacking the matchup he wants. And after the defense switches, Reaves will clear out to the wing to space the floor. Then they can set up the Bron and AD pick and roll, and when PG helps at the nail, that leaves Reaves with a ton of room to step into a triple. Maybe the biggest key to the fit between Reaves and that superstar duo is the simple fact that he's a great spot-up guy. Over the last 3 seasons, he's made about 38% of his catch-and-shoot threes, which may not sound like some crazy high mark, but the actual shot making is only the tip of the iceberg with him. It starts with his movement. He's great at relocating along the perimeter and finding little pockets in the defense, which makes him an easy target for kickouts. And after finding those pockets, he's a capable enough shooter to demand hard closeouts, to which he'll counter off the catch. If there's an extra swing pass to be made, he will keep the ball moving and connect the offense. If his defender's overcommitting, he can use a shot fake to sell the jumper, this time getting into a one dribble pull-up. But most importantly, because of how good he is at reading defenders, he's capable of putting the ball down and attacking these closeouts as a driver, where he's right back to pressuring the defense. This play against the Raptors is maybe my favorite highlight of his from the season. He starts to attack a closeout on a left-hand drive, gets cut off, and immediately spins back to his right to get into the paint. Then when a shot blocker steps up to meet him, he throws a beautiful behind the back dime. And because he's got those 3 major skills, the shooting, the dribbling, and the passing, they'll often spot him up one pass away from LeBron on the wing to make it tough on defenses who like to bring help in the middle. So in totality, we're talking about one of the league's most versatile offensive guards. A guy who can play every role in set action, from the initiator, to the screener, to the one coming off of the screen. A guy who can utilize all 3 levels as a pick and roll scorer and counter help defense with a wide variety of passes. A guy who can play away from the ball and next to stars in multiple different ways, most commonly as a spot up where he can shoot, pass, or attack off the catch. That's why he's such an ideal number 3 next to LeBron and AD, and why LA's offensive numbers look so great when they all share the floor. Looking at the last 3 seasons and excluding garbage time, they've played a total of over 1,700 minutes together, and in that time they've produced an offensive rating of 120.4, which is elite. And just to highlight the value of a guy like Reaves specifically, if we take him off the floor, the duo of Bron and AD has only produced a rating of 114.1, now lacking that third presence as a scorer and creator. Through 10 games this season, they're currently sitting at an overall team offensive rating of 117.9, good for 7th in the NBA, while Reaves has seen a continuous increase to his involvement, now looking like he could just be a 20 point per game type of scorer. What does that mean for his career outlook? I'm not entirely sure, but there's no denying that he's a great number 3 guy, and he takes the Lakers to an entirely different level. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out the Hoop Venue podcast and my social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of Reaves. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.